Hello to everyone and welcome to our webinar today. We are going to discuss about identity and access management services. I am Violeta, and today I'm joined by Artur, Michael, and Sandeep, who are our security design specialists, and they will tell you more about what the session is about. As I said before, so Artur, Michael, and Sandeep are our speakers, and I will let them the pleasure to say a few things about themselves, and then we can go straight to the presentations, because we have prepared like some introductory slides so you can guys get familiar with the identity and access management services that we provide, and then we have as well prepared two demos. Keep in mind that we might overrun a bit, so if you have the possibility to stay a bit longer, feel free to do this. I think it will be very interesting for you to actually take advantage of this full session. That was all on my side. Artur, over to you.
Thank you, Violeta. Hi, everyone.
Welcome.
This is Artur. I'm part of the EMEA security specialist team, and I'm dealing with identity and access management for quite a long time already. So I'm very happy to be here on this session and share our experience on this and what we have developed for you. So yeah, please stay tuned and let's see what we have to share with you. Michael.
Okay, this is Michael. So Michael Fischer, I'm one of the domain specialists and will cover the part authentication, authorization, user management. Up to Sandeep.
Thanks, Michael. So basically, Sandeep here, a part of the EMEA identity and security team. So looking forward to have some conversations on access governance today. What do you, Artur?
Very well. So let me share my screen. Bear with me. Can you guys see my slide?
Yes, all good.
Good. All right, so let's start. So I'm going to do the introduction about these cloud native services so that you understand which one does what. And then later on, my two colleagues will go into a little bit more details into each one of those and with a demo for you. Hopefully the content is going to be interesting and you can do follow-up with us in the technical terms and so on. All right, so let's talk a little bit about the portfolio that Oracle has in the identity and access management space. So we've been here for more than 20 years, so we have quite a good experience on this market. And we have been going through the history of the evolution of identity and access management with small to medium and big customers and all over the world with all types of deployments on premises, in the clouds, hybrid, and so on. So, of course, you would expect us to have a good offering in the strong and adaptive authentication. This is mostly about the innovative space in access management areas in which you want to make sure that intelligence is made into the process so that you really identify who is accessing your applications and you act accordingly. Then the most important part about it is access management, and access management is gonna be the core functionality orchestrating all the flows that allow you or deny you access to the information. We also need identity store services so that we know who is accessing and we identify those identities, and we need to have mechanisms to do the lifecycle management of those identities across all the target applications, all the identity store services. And we also need to govern what's going on and also apply compliance. So this is why we have this Oracle OCI Identity and Access Management Service and also the Oracle Access Governance Service. This is going to be today's focus. But of course, you would expect, since we are here for more than 20 years, you expect us to also to have software-based services, which we do. And so we also have the traditional software versions of these type of services for the access management space, directory services, and identity governance. These software components can be deployed on premises or also in the cloud, for instance, as Kubernetes containers. So as you can see, we have quite a lot of offering for you, but today's session is going to be on the cloud native space. So we are going to focus on the two ones at the top. So regarding what we have done so far, so we went through, you know, the typical growth in the cloud space that has happened throughout the latest years. And when we look at the statistics, it's impressive because nowadays we have already more than 1 million IAM instances across the globe, and we are covering already 44 cloud regions all over the globe. And we have more than 150 million identities under scope, which is impressive. And of course, this means development had a huge effort to make it scalable, to make it reliable. So I think from these numbers, you can see that we are serious about what we do in this space. For instance, the Oracle internal deployment itself, it's all about 170K employees, 4,500 applications. So it's impressive the work we've done already in integrating and managing access to those applications and the roles that everyone has inside the application. So that's what we've been doing. And of course, we use our own experience to improve what we offer to our customers as well. So Oracle has developed the IAM offering in the cloud native services so that we are able to maximize your cloud security posture. So these two services working together, and I think they follow like this trusted circle that self-improves it, the security posture that you have by protecting, auditing, making sure you are compliant, and fulfillment all the necessary changes. Let's see a little bit about what we do in each space. So the protection area, which maybe it's the thing that you see most in front of you when you are dealing with the IAM products, is like when you define the policies, you also define how you access applications. So you need to control the applications in a way that authorization and authentication is performed accordingly. And you also want to add, I would say, risk-based multi-factor authentication in the flow so that you bring more intelligence according to the risk level of the flow that is being initiated. So all of this is done in the protection space of our offering, typically the Oracle OCI IAM product. And then this is where I would say you see most of the effect of the IAM system versus what you have to offer to your own customers. So when we deal with these type of systems, we also need to audit because we need to continually look at what's going on. So visibility is very important. So OCI IAM has a very detailed audit trail so that you can inspect that via APIs. And we have also the possibility to know who has access to what, so that you also understand I would say in a visible way, and also in a way that you can show to your auditors this type of information, which is very important. You need to know what's going on by knowing who has access to what. And also the system is able to detect anomalies, like, for instance, if someone has access in excess according to what they should have, the system will be able to detect these anomalies and provide you some hints about how to correct that. And how do you correct that? You do that via the compliance engine. So in the compliance engine, we are able to do access reviews. We are able to attestate the access that each one has across all the enterprise applications, all the services that they have access to. Of course, this means all the entitlements that they have in the identity stores that are used in your platform. And of course, this system will need also to perform the remediation actions to correct if something is found as beyond what it should be, I would say, granted to that user. So putting all this together, you need to also to make sure that you are in compliance with your own rules and also with the legislation rules that apply to your company. Finally, because we have these remediation actions, we need to fulfill that. So we need to have a provisioning engine that is able to perform all the actions in the identity stores, in the applications, so that the access and the entitlements are corrected, or at least are created with the proper baseline versus what this account should have. And this is done across all your Oracle, I would say, workloads, but we also support multi-cloud and hybrid environments. So we are able to also to perform these actions in on-premise applications, in other cloud providers. So as you can see, we will be able to deploy this security posture and to enforce it across all your systems in all your, I would say, identity platforms that you may be using. All right, so I hope this has show you how your security posture can be, I would say, maintained in a continuous mode. And this is kind of the overview about these two main components that we have in the access management space in the cloud. So with that, I'm going to pass over to Michael. He's going to explain a little bit more in what we can do with OCI IAM. And I'll be watching over the Q&A. So if you look into your Zoom console, you see at the bottom Q&A, you can post there your questions, and I'll be monitoring those questions. I'll try to answer them as we go. Okay, over to you, Michael.
Thanks, Artur. So I will cover some of the points Artur, for which Artur gave an overview. And I start with the beginning of a new tenant. So as you know, Oracle Cloud starts with the zero trust model. So this means in the beginning, there is only the tenant owner who created the tenant. So this is the upper box. So this tenant owner is an administrator. He's assigned to the administrators group. And the administrator has the policy which entitles him to manage all in the tenant. So this means this is the root account, and the best practice is to use the root account for basic configuration, and afterwards protect it, put in a data safe or in a break glass scenario, but do not further use it. And of course, enable multi-factor authentication for this account. So before the first steps for the admin would be that he has to create a security model. So the model means this is the structure of the tenant, because you can not entitle users or resources without having the structure. So of course you can, but then there are all admins, and that's probably not the best idea. So after you created the structure, then you can create the users and the permissions for the users. I will come to this in the next slide. And after then you have the construct where the cloud can already work. So and now if you have an enterprise identity access management, which is the leading IAM, you should connect it for providing the single sign-on. So no local login in the cloud. If you have if you have an enterprise IAM, and do the provisioning. So this means entitle the users according to the enterprise IAM. But this is optional. You don't have to use an external IAM, but if you have, you should connect. One of the next points is enforce the multi-factor authentication, at least for high entitlements or high roles, like creating resources or deleting them, and they use the adaptive security, which Artur mentioned already. So this means we have a risk score on users, and you can use this risk score to enable different login or at least protect the cloud from a login for one person with a high score. And in the end, you can choose different identity domains. So this is the store where the users are stored. And it's also good practice to separate, for example, your customers from your operations personnel. And for this, you can make different domains. So more you can find in the white paper where this link is leading to. So here to show how the authorization in OCI works. So in the beginning, as mentioned, you have the user. A user cannot be entitled directly. So a user has to be a member of the group. And the group is defined in policy what the group can do. So the policy has a scope. The scope is the compartment. So compartment is the logical area in the cloud. And in this compartment, you will create resources. So you can only create resources in a compartment. You cannot create it flying free in the tenant. So it's associated to a compartment, and the policy allows you to create, for example, a compute instance in the development compartment. So this is how this works. This is the same like instances work. So you can enable instances, for example, databases, to access resources. So you need it, for example, if you want a database to import data from object store, then you have first to allow the instance to access the object store. For this, you write a policy with an instance. So instance is referred in a dynamic group. So here the first step, how to create structure. So this is the left part of the image. So the columns are here two models. So the upper one is, I go here for a model where I have different departments, and I go here for production, and that the second level of compartments is, for example, sales, and sales owns a retail and an inventory system. So this is then the third level of the compartments, and you see the retail is divided up in the components, so front-end, middle-tier database, everyone in a separate compartment. And so you can see you can easily, for example, separate the database admin from the middle-tier developer or operations personnel. So, and the lower model is aligned to the project phases. You see here, it's here in the department sales, which has the retail website, and then it's the stage development has production, and then again here the front end here. So you are free to choose your structure, and this is one dimension. See, a hierarchy is like a tree, and then you have a second dimension. This is tagging. So you could put tags which are then also enforced during the policies. So, for example, a developer can only manage databases with the tag development, or even with more specific tags, meaning in a region and so on. So you are free. And the picture on the right shows the IAM domain structure sample. So you have in the beginning the IAM domain 1, or the default identity domain. This is intended for managing all tenant resources. So this is the admin account in the first step. And then you can create further domains, like here, the two boxes are listed. And I have chosen here one, for example, for the test environment. So I've, in this domain, I would only have test users, which are enabled or entitled to use applications in the test environment. And here in the below one, I have similar picture for applications in the production environment. And of course, you can use more than one identity domain to connect to the same application. So you can use within authentication of an application, choose different IAM systems. So that's not all. So here you see the full picture of the identity access management. So this does not cover the second part from Sandeep, so the access governance and review part. So what I've just explained is here the middle box, the IAM, which has the user stored in the database, and the policies up front. So the beginning is the left image here, the login. So for the login, you can decide to have a local login or a federated or delegated login. So social login means like Facebook, federated is SAML, OpenID, and so on. You have the multi-factor functionality and the adaptive security functionality, which you can reuse. And here you, on the left column, you have the providers you can connect. For example, use an Azure AD as leading system for the login, for the SSO. To get the users into the systems, we have here different mechanisms. You can do it, of course, by hand, or you have bridges where you can provision users, for example, from an LDAP or from an Active Directory or a scheme-based application. So several ways to do this. And the right part of the image shows that you can connect your applications into this IAM system. So we have an app catalog with about 80 applications for predefined integrations, like for Salesforce and so on. We have an app gateway where you can integrate applications which only understand HTTP header and several other mechanisms. And in the lower row, you see the different protocols we support, and all of these protocols and the full API is usable with REST API and different SDKs. So if you don't like to have native REST calls, you can also use a Python SDK, Java SDK, and so on. I will show later on the sample with the Postman integration. So for the demo startup, so this is my last slide after I switch to the browser. I have here the surrounding box is the tenant. In the tenant, I have the root compartment. This is created with the tenant together. So the star means it's created by default, the same as the default domain. So we have users, and we have two groups, administrators. So this is the root account and all domain users. So as the name mentions, the users. And I have created a further department called demo department with three other ones to separate here the development, production, and security, for example. I have these pre-built roles, the first two ones, and I have created two further ones for auditors. So auditors meaning allowed to read all, and developers meaning they can manage resources in development compartment, means creating compute instances, networks, databases, and so on. And here below the list with the users I created, because to be able to use functionality of the cloud, you have to be in a group, these ones, and then you can act on this. So here only for later on what I will show. So now I switch to the tenant, so I'm already logged in. You know, perhaps that if you don't know where a service is listed, you can use the search bar and then go for here for the services. So just showing you first structure. You see here the tenant is this one, and I have this demo compartment from the slides I created. And here the management compartment is auto-created also by OCI for several past services. So not for further use here. So I go for the demo department, and you see I have here these three sub-compartments below the demo compartment as shown in the slides. And if I now go to the domains, you will see I have here the default domain. So this is the auto-created one where the root account is in. And I have also a second domain. You will recognize this domain is not in the root compartment. So here's only the default one, but it's already in a demo compartment. This is to be more restrictive what a user can do. So if I select the demo compartment, you will see the groups I have on the slide. So for example, the auditors group. So you see the auditors group has a user, the cloud auditor. So this is the user. I have further groups as for my use case. Here the lower ones are the pre-created built-in groups, and I have here a group which is synced from Azure. So I have a sample where I connected in Azure AD for managing some groups and also the logins. I have here a dynamic group. The dynamic group is for allowing resources to access something. So I have here defined the resources in this compartment, or the resource with the ID. Here you see it's a database, is within this dynamic group, and this dynamic group can then be entitled via policy. I just go here for the auditor sample, and you see here the policy statement always begins with an allow, because as you remember, we start with a zero trust. No one can do anything. And you have to entitle here the group. Group was domain auditors. And here I say it is allowed to inspect everything below demo compartment. So this auditor cannot look into the root compartments or parallel compartments. So it's bound to the structure here in my case. So inspect all is something like listing. Then I allow the read one to see, for example, in compute instances, what are these instances? Are they 4 CPU based and so on? And then I allow to read the audit events. So this means OCI logs all requests in the audit log. The audit log is a retention of 1 year. And within this audit log, you can search, you can export the audit log. And so this is the typical first step for the auditor to check here, for example, the login events. So as I mentioned before, I have connected Azure. This is just to show you how this works. So Azure is declared as an IDP provider, so identity provider. So here it's listed. I do not jump in here for not showing the confidential data on this, but just to show how this works. You can here add an IDP, and then afterwards you import the metadata from Azure, and then you define how does OCI recognize the user. So for example, it's the username, or it's the email, or with any other attribute. And then you enable this IDP for usage in the IDP policy, in the so-called. So I choose here the default one, and you see here I added already the Azure demo, and I have a third one. So these buttons are then visible for logging in. So this is just how the login works. And if you want to enable, for example, MFA, then you have these so-called sign-on policies. I have here, this is the default one, this is always in, and you have here a provisioned one from Oracle to protect the admins, but it's deactivated, as you see here. And only to shortly jump in to this sign-on rule, you see here, I can, for example, specify if I log in with username and password, and I'm administrator, then I will enforce this additional factor. So, and I can even restrict it, that I only allow, for example, the FIDO one. And so the admins are all enforced during the next login to roll out a FIDO authenticator, or for example, this mobile pass code, and otherwise they cannot log in. Risk here is that you log yourself out of the tenant. And for this, you can define so-called application. So I have here an API client, which I will use for Postman. And you see here, I have the SIM client from Azure, but just to show, if the user interface locks you out, then you can use an API client to change this, for example, sign-on policy I just showed before. And so for adding application, you see nothing surprises you. You get the app catalog, so these are the predefined one. You can integrate a SAML application, or for Postman, a confidential client in this case. So that's this interface for just to show how this Azure button looks like. So I have here, let's see if this works. You see here, this is the Azure demo button I introduced in the login. So this is how the button appears. And you see, if I click it, I will be redirected to Microsoft to do like the login. And afterwards, I'll be back and then logged in OCI, and OCI does not see how the authentication was provided. I have here the user. You see here it's demo test user 1. And if we go back into the in the domain, into the users, you see here I have the test user 1, and then Azure the user has a complete different name. And here this user I have not entitled at all, so he just can log in and do nothing in the tenant. Which the last step is showing the Postman. I think you all know the Postman. You get a token with the client credential flow. And then I hope my token is valid. Then, for example, list the users. Yeah. And you see here, cloud admin, cloud developer, auditor, test user. So these are my 4 users in the identity domain. You get these collections with within a link from a tutorial to GitHub. And so I want to stop this one and hand over to Sandeep for showing how these policies can be reviewed.
Sure, thanks. Thanks, Michael. Let me get started. Okay, quick check on time. So I will bit accelerated just to keep on time check. All right, thanks, Michael. We'll get going. The first part was about Oracle's identity and access management as a platform for OCI and the resources. Now, the next part, we're going to discuss about the access governance areas, right? So the access governance is for what? So access governance is for the identities, right? So it's basically for identity governance, and also for, you would say that for cloud entitlements, essentially for the infrastructure entitlements of, different OCI instances, or, different application, could be on-premise, could be SaaS application. So in principle, what, OCI access governance cloud service is helping, it's essentially, it is keep, learning, keep discovering, and, essentially helps organizations to basically look for risk, right? Once you look at risk, then organization can work on how to comply it, how to mitigate it. But the most important part is, where you're going to look at it. So you're going to look at the identities, you're going to look at the accounts, the policies, the resources, the privileges. So essentially, that's where access governance is going to look for, for these, information, and is going to surface out what are the risks in your organization, right? And those risks essentially in access governance go beyond not only the OCI or Oracle applications, SaaS or on-premise. It can go cross cloud, other cloud applications, other SaaS application as well. It can go on the edge services, and try to reconcile that metadata and help an organization to assign and assess that risk. Right now, just a quick glimpse on the access governance cloud service is a native service fairly new that we launched a few months back. So essentially what we intend to do is we intend to create a possibility that, from a central access governance, we can look for identities, we can look for the cloud infrastructure entitlements, right? And what we brought in as a platform, so essentially we got in, a quick, wizard-based, intuitive UI, so that, you can quickly have a quick dashboard looking at, your application, your resources. You would have and information, you can take an informed call. And how you to take that with analytics aspect, with intelligence inbuilt in that. So that helps. Again, the codeless aspect because of the workflows, default, you don't have to put in any codes. The multi-level, the parallel approvals, you could have it, do are predefined for you, right? The access control aspect of you can have role-based, you can have attribute access, and you have policy-based access control also you can bring in for access governance, right? The business process is simple because of the workflow aspect of it, right? So we got in those workflow inbuilt there, TCOs with the cloud service, and the resiliency with the cloud service that we give here. Now, so where do we stand? And in terms of what is the key feature of the access governance, which is helping or which will help organizations, right? One is it gives continuity learning, discovering, exploring. But what is it different than the others, right? Then we would ask each other. So the idea of being productive and prescriptive. I have to put in a simple example, right? Let's say we observe there's in conflict segregation of duty has been highlighted. Somebody having now, as a reviewer, I want to know that should I accept or I need to go and review it. So there should be a certain intelligence should be thrown to me that yes, you need to review this first thing. And when I review it, I need to have a certain prescriptive analytics for me to support and see that maybe these are a number of users already having in the organization from this particular department. So it should give me a good reason, first a recommendation, and second intelligence for me to have an insight and take that informed decision. So that's precisely prescriptive analytics that is bringing in. Today we're going to focus on Oracle basically cloud infrastructure OCI purely from access governance perspective. So how does access governance essentially monitors the identities of OCI IAM, and second, essentially the cloud in infrastructure entitlements, right? So we're going to have a look at it. So now we were just, having a look at Michael's demo on OCI IAM. So what we looked at is, he had his own structure, he had his compartment, he was discussing, right, about, those demo compartments, and it had a production stage development environments. So we're going to have a quick look because I have configured it, to reconcile and connect to OCI IAM instance of Michael's one. Okay, so we'll go on in a moment on that. So this is the UI of access governance, wherein if you see it's quite intuitive in terms of it has different, it's like a conversation that we're trying to carry for a reviewer, right? So he or she can go ahead and ask, go for approvals, check for the pending request, or review actions waiting for him or her, and essentially, make a new request. So it can check both a top-down, what access do I have, and bottom-up, what access does overall enterprise has it. So before we get going, let's quickly talk about how do we establish identity orchestration, right? So essentially, in this case, what I have done is, this is the very instance of Michael's OCI IAM, which I integrated and I did the identity orchestration, reconcile those identities. And essentially what you would do is you would go here. So, you can talk to your on-premise governance system, or you can, talk to your OCI. You could have one, or you could have multiple instances of OCI, right? Or you could have other providers. We'll come to that later. So here, basically you would define, so, OCI, you could, so these are the coming soon for the other, Azure and the Google ones in line. So basically here, I'm going to, have system integration. So I'm basically going to look for, configure. So here is what I'm going to supply that respective OCI IAM tenancy details, and that's it. And that's get onboarded, added. And what I'll do is then I can also decide what all identities I'm going to manage with it. You don't want to bring in all identities in here, right? So what I can do is I can do, again, check. You can have different attributes, the location, department, status, organization. So here are the ones what I have. Just simple logic I applied is I have checked for status active and trying to pull in the users. So, all these are all users. These are basically by regions. I applied UAE and the other region. So these are the users that I get it, right? Now, having said that, let's quickly go and let's establish a connect. When I was saying that access governance gave you top down and bottom up, right? So let's look at what does bottom up approach essentially saying. So it's basically saying that any resource or the access that you have, you can check who has access to it. So for example, let's check for the demo compartment, which Michael was showing. So for Michael's demo compartment, if you observe, so this is the one. So I can actually go and fetch dev, production, security. This what he created. I can look which are those identities and I can have a review for them. Okay. So let's have a quick check on the one I have created for this. Okay. So I have these, right? So I have created certain structure. So if I go and look for these particular resources, which are the identities, I have these, as my dummy environment I created. So these are the users, and I could go ahead and I can check as well what all their access are there, right? So they have these roles. Okay, I can go and check these roles are applicable to whom. So these are applicable to the instance from their coming on for the AG instance. Okay, so I can always go and check that. Now we saw the bottom up, right? Let's look at top down. So essentially, my user, I can go ahead and check my user. Sec. So, okay, finished. That's Pamela. And I'm going to have a access I have, right? So here it is. It shows the roles. It will show which instance that I access to, right? That's the top down. You can have a look at yours. Now, the next part is the access reviews. You can have, create your own campaigns. Now that campaigns, am I audible? Just to be sure.
Yes, you are.
Right. So here, here is the possibility that I get when I create the campaigns. So I can go ahead and I can check for the tenancies. So I have connected to different tenancies. So you can go check. I can check for different compartment answer, which are tied to different identity domains, because you could have multiple domains and multiple stripes, right? So you would have different domains. You can check and then it would apply. Okay, so essentially you see this is what you see, right? This is all resources available. As you do the selection, it would would reduce and tell what is the scope in. So that will with the very specific scope we can go in. Now let's move to the other ones. So here you can do by identities also. You can check which people that you want to have access to. The application roles, so the PaaS and SaaS also we're going to have it soon in the plans. And then the policies, for example, right? So I'll have a quick check on the policies. So these are the ones I created for the tenancy, so I can apply it. So what I'm trying to do is that I'm applying. So now if you see, the scope has completely changed only to 3 policies, right? So I can go ahead, and approach my workflow. So here you could have a default one. You can take it up and finish it, or you can just go ahead and choose your own workflow, which will allow you to add those level of, so you can change your level of approval workflows, who should be the first one to review, and the days that you want to keep it for. And you could apply essentially different levels for it. So idea is that's the whole basis of this, that it's a purely wizard driven. It's a codeless in terms of when you want to have this workflow to be included, so you don't have to go and start coding in that. Okay, so that's so I'll go ahead. So because I'm reviewing the policies, so I can run it quickly now, and in 10 minutes it starts it, and otherwise I can schedule it, right? So let's schedule it for now. Here we go. Right. So it has created that, and it will run and execute it. So this is how you basically create a campaign. It could be for different OCI instances, for respective anti-domains, policies, identities, roles. You can create that. Okay. Now let's go and check, is there anything waiting for my review? So if you see for Pamela, so she already has certain users to review. So she can take action. That is identity-based, governance, right? So they can look at it, what access have, and can, go back and check. Now let's go for the access. Basically, so I have created a few policies in the past. Let's have a look at it. Now, if you observe here, so there are certain policies which already giving me a recommendation, right? The recommendation says that you accept it, right? At the same time, there's certain recommendation which says review it. So what does that mean, right? So that's precisely is the predictive analytics, in the sense of it's because it has checked, and in terms of the sensitivity of that policy, it has already said you can accept it, but you can make an aware call, you can kick, and you can go to the actions. Now here you can have a look at it, right? So here you can check, okay, what are those policies, right? And you can have a quick look at it. You can see that, okay, these are the ones which user had it, because you want to have that information with you. So demo user 3 is what I had created, had this policy is applicable. So you still can take that informed call. You want to keep it. I mean, whether you want to selectively accept it for all, or you want to select it or revoke it. So that what it's doing is it also doing the fulfillment using the remediation, right? It would go ahead and then revoke that particular permission from that policy in OCI IAM. Okay. Similarly, for certain certain policy, it has a recommendation review. So let's have a look at these and check what was the reason being. Yeah. So, these are the ones. So you want to have a look at it and see which all users. So yes, so there are a few users already there. So you want to have, take that informed call, whether you want to accept it or you want to just, revoke it for certain user, and then, go ahead and take certain action. Okay. Right. So before I forget, there is one piece I forgot to mention in terms of the identities. So here you could, add, different attributes essentially. So basically department by location, and those only specific users can be bring into your access governance. So it could be for employee, it could be for consumer users, because that's where, it will apply that workforce respective licensing as well for that part. Yeah, that's pretty much from my end. One sec. Now I'll just go back to the slides. Right. So, first of all, I'd like to thank everyone on behalf of Artur, Michael, myself, to listen to us, as in the possibility that we intend to create is again for OCI IAM and access governance. Both are the native services and helping, for your identity governance and, resources work as an identity hub for your organizations. We look forward to have more conversations in the near future for identity and security. And having said that, I'll pass it over to Violeta. Back to you.
Thank you, Sandika. Thanks a lot. Well, I think that we are ready to close the call. With that, I would like to thank you all for being here with us. And we hope to see you soon in the cloud coaching sessions. Thank you, team, for delivering such a great presentation and demo. And I really enjoy it. And I hope that I can invite you again soon. Thank you and enjoy the rest of the day.
Bye, everyone.
Bye-bye.